Welcome back to the show. If it's a Wednesday on SportsWrap, it can only mean one thing. It's time for the NBA Weekly. Kurt Helin, pro basketball talk at NBCSports.com. Did I catch you in the middle of something? You okay there?
I realized my microphone was facing the wrong way, so I figured I should at least...
Oh, you actually use a microphone? Sometimes I can't even tell.
Yeah, it's the way the setup is here. It's just kind of off camera, but yes, there is a microphone.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to make me sound, like James Earl Jones, so I think it works great.
Kurt Helin hanging out with us. I said you must be tired of me because now I'm texting you like at all hours of the day and night. I know. I apologize. I had
that game on. I was watching the Nuggets last night at the end too.
I literally just randomly texted him and was like, "Wow, that was a great play call." And I thought he was going to respond with, "What are you talking about?" For those that don't know, we were talking about this. So last night, the end of the Nuggets Suns game. Great finish to that game, by the way. Jokic almost went 20-20-20 again. It's just ridiculous. And we're not even talking about him for MVP anymore. Like, we've just apparently gotten so tired of talking about Nikola Jokic as an MVP. Anybody but him. So, I mean, great finish to that game. And, you've got the Nuggets in that kind of goulash with the Lakers and the Rockets and the Timberwolves all sort of in the middle of that Western Conference. We keep talking about, wow, the rise of the Lakers. But if you put the proverbial gun to my head and said, what team is more likely to make a run, the Lakers at 3 or the Nuggets wherever they land, I'll take the Nuggets.
You are not alone there. I think it's an interesting discussion for the Lakers, and that whole grouping between 3 and 6, where they're 2.5 games apart, like all of them, and we kind of got the same thing in the East. But in the West, 3 through 6, 2 of those teams are going to go home after the first round and be very disappointed in the playoff outcome and their season because of it. And it's really going to come down to matchups. Everybody would like to face the Rockets right now, because that looks like the weakest playoff opponent. They are not handling pressure well. They've not been good in the clutch. The Lakers are a little scary because if you get into a close game with them, they've got Luka and AR and LeBron. But could the Lakers beat Denver in a series? I'm not sure. Could the Lakers beat Minnesota in a series? Again, not totally sure that they can. That's a really tough series. They knocked them out last year. It's a tough matchup for them if Minnesota's healthy. It's really going to come down to matchups a lot, and it's going to be fascinating in that grouping.
Yeah, it is. Sam, go ahead.
Kurt, we were talking a little bit about the potential for expansion and the vote that will come of that. I'm curious, it's something that I don't think we've discussed at all with the potential of expansion and however that may go. Will it affect the schedule? Because it seems like we've got these coaches, whether it be Steve Kerr, JJ Redick, all talking about too many games, this, that, the third. Do you think that having more teams will adversely or proversely affect the schedule in terms of how many games we have?
First off, just so we know, the owners did vote today to explore expansion and start looking at bids in Seattle and Las Vegas, which is akin to... Look, they're at the point they're going to get bids now, and they're going to look at those bids. And if you think they're going to look at $15 million or so that they get without putting it, they don't share that money with the players, right? They each get, if it's $15 million, if it's 7.5 per, that's a $500 million check per team. And if you think the owners are going to be like, nah, we're good, I just don't think that's how it's going to go. They're good. They're going to approve this. The question right now, that schedule question, I just don't see them cutting back because of it's the money, right? Like, everybody would have to take a little bit of a pay cut. Nobody's willing to kind of do that to make those numbers work. Even if you're going to argue scarcity a little bit, like the NFL, what makes football so great is that these games matter because there's only so many of them. I mean, you're talking about cut 10 games out of the schedule, and you still got 72. Like,
yeah,
it's still
10, there's not enough. They can't cut enough to get to scarcity.
Right, they can't. So I don't think it really works for them. What will be fascinating out of that is the fight for the team that gets to go east, because Seattle and Vegas have to go in the west for obvious reasons, just of geographic location. So Minnesota, Memphis, New Orleans is the farthest team east, but they don't seem like they're going to get it. It seems like Memphis and Minnesota are going to fight for the right to go east. And I'll tell you that there's a lot of people leaning towards Minnesota. The Timberwolves would love that. It's a slightly softer conference, but also they're closer to Detroit and Milwaukee, and it makes there's a certain, you can match that up a little easier. So that's going to be the big fight, is which team gets to go east.
Who are you voting for MVP as of right now? It's got to be SGA, right?
Yeah. Look, Shai's a clear number one to me, and then you kind of get into the mix of Wemby, Jokic. Doncic has played great of late, and how do you want to sort them through? I'll probably have Doncic fourth, but and Wemby, SGA. Again, I've got to do a deep dive in the final weeks of the season and decide exactly how.
Could any of them take it away from SGA in the final 10 games?
I don't think so, barring as long as he meets the threshold. He is one of those guys where he's got to make sure he plays enough games. But as long as he gets there, I don't see how you take that away from him at this point. Putting up 30-something points a game, one of the best players in the league, does play really good defense. I know that was Wemby's argument. Doesn't work as well with Shai as, say, Doncic. And the other part of that is they're on pace to win 65 games for the second straight year. The only other teams to win 65-plus games 2 straight years, Jordan-era Bulls, Durant, Curry-era Warriors. That's a really good team he's leading.
I sense a 65-game threshold question from Sam coming. Hold on.
100%. That's exactly what's coming, so Jason. You saw the statement that we got, Kurt, yesterday from the NBPA. What did you make of this? What do you think is coming with the 65-game limit or min?
It's going to get revisited this summer, and hopefully they just abolish it, because incremental changes I don't think solve it. But Cade Cunningham is now the poster boy for what's wrong with this, and it's a perfect case. He was on his way to first team All-NBA and being in that top 5 in, however you're going to shake it out, top 5 in MVP voting. And he suffers the collapsed lung on kind of a fluke play. And the buzz out, look, he could theoretically come back and still play 5 games, but the buzz out of Detroit is really we just want to get him back for the playoffs. They don't really expect to see him the rest of the regular season. And if that's the case and he falls short of that number, he'll finish at 60 qualifying games. You and I have talked about this here before. What I'd really like to do as a voter was, I'm going to ding him for that. I'm going to ding him for the missed time, but he falls to second team All-NBA or third team, or however you want to shake that out, but he gets rewarded for it still.
Yeah. Kurt Helin's hanging out with us. One more segment to talk about. We'll get to some more from the East as well as we continue on SportsWrap. All right, before I get to a couple of Eastern Conference items, I do have one more thing in the West that I want to get to with Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. Hangs out with Sam and myself. That Moses Moody injury was tough to watch. And boy, they have just been decimated by injuries out there in the Bay Area this year. Is there any word as to what exactly the severity of that Moody injury is?
Oh yeah, it is a torn patellar tendon.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The kneecap is the tendon, and that it's a really common football injury. A lot of linemen get that one. In the NBA, it's a little less common, but the guys who've had it, it's been 9 months to a year. He's going to miss a chunk of next season, and if not most of it. So it really is kind of a blow, because he's not only a really good rotation player in the NBA and fits great with what they want to do in Golden State, but also just one of the really good active guys. He's really active in Little Rock, where he's from, and all this stuff. He's one of the really good charitable guys in the league, and it's just hard to see. And that's not, by the way, 2 Warriors, if you count Jimmy Butler and his ACL, who are not only out for the rest of this season, but are going to miss a big chunk of next season before they're back in the
Does
fold.
it make them revisit this idea of a teardown?
No, not as long as Steph Curry is still in the building. As long as Steph Curry wants to be a Warrior, he's a Warrior, and they'll just live with it.
It blows my mind. Give me thoughts on the East here. We're watching the Pistons play without Cade. The Celtics sort of holding that 2 spot. We've talked about seeding and what it could mean. Give me your impressions here on where we are in the East.
Yeah, Pistons are 3-0 without Cade, including beating a hot Laker team and ending their win streak. Defense will do that. Jenkins has stepped up big time for them, and just like a lot of people come out of nowhere, but he's one of those 4-year guys who could step in and help a little bit. He bounced around, played at Iona, I believe, played at St. John's at the end, I think, if I'm remembering that right. But really stepped in and has played great for them. And now, look, I think they're the number one. Your Knicks and the Celtics are like, it's going to be 2-3 in whatever order, and it's going to come down to the final days. That's a really tight race. Probably Cleveland at 4. The fun part of the East is 5 through 10, because it is 10. Like, there's a hard line there. The Bucks aren't climbing in. But again, like the West, 2.5 games separate 5 through 10. And like avoiding the play-in versus having to get somebody brutal in the first round if you even get out of the play-in, it's really tight. And Philadelphia's in there, Toronto, some really interesting teams. Atlanta and Charlotte are probably the hottest teams in that group, but it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out by the end of the season.
Who's the best chance to create an upset, Atlanta or Charlotte? First round upset.
That's a really good. As deep as Atlanta is, I kind of like Charlotte just because I think their high end talent, like LaMelo Ball's good, and what he's really done this year, what really stepped his game up, is he's gone from 10 or 12, like, what kind of decision was that? Plays a game where he's just trying to make too big a play or trying to do something. He's cut that down to a handful a game. There's a couple times a game where you still are like, dude, no. But he's taking better care of the ball. And they've got, look, Con Knippel is really good. He can run the play. Brandon Miller, they've got real talent around them. I don't know that they beat I don't know that they beat one of those top teams. But, man, if I'm Detroit or Boston or New York, I don't want to see Charlotte in the first round because now I got to work. Now I really got to put it in on them as opposed to getting, I don't know, banged up Philadelphia or something.
How about Orlando? They feel like they've been in the same spot for 3 years, Kurt.
Yeah, because Paolo Banchero's awful. Sorry.
Wow, tell us what you really think, Sam.
Sam agrees with a lot of people in Orlando, not necessarily with the team, but like there's some frustration there with whether he's a really good player. He's an all-star level player, but is he your number one? Can he play next to Franz? Remains Wagner, who's out, but will be back soon. Remains a legitimate question. Are you better off moving Paolo? And is it a question of not just talent, but fit? And do they need to make changes there? I will say this, there will be changes in the offseason. And if I were Jamal Mosley, I might be contacting realtors. He is one of him, Doc Rivers. There's a couple guys who there's almost no chance they're back next year, no matter what happens.
Speaking of guys finding realtors and offseason moves, Kurt, there are two players I wanted to ask you about. Let's start with Giannis, because this is a guy we've been talking about getting traded for darn near 18 months at this point. It feels like this is just getting uglier and uglier by the day with the grievances and the Bucks being mad. Where are you at with the whole Giannis Bucks situation?
God, there's so much unnecessary drama. Again, I didn't look right before I came on, but they were, I think, 7 or 8 games out of the play-in with 10 to play. Like, they're not mathematically eliminated, but they're eliminated. Look, Giannis, in this case, it's just performative. Everybody knows you're competitive, dude. We all get it. It just feels like it's just performative for you at this point. You have to do it for your own ego, when the best thing for this team would be to look. There's teams that they are in the mix with odds-wise, like the Pelicans, who are lost last night to the Knicks, but are trying to win. Like like you might be able to jump up a couple spots and help your lottery odds. And I think that, I know that everybody hates the tanking thing, but when you get 10 games left in the season and you're out, I get where they're at, but that's going to become a thing. This point of tension will build over into the offseason. And again, most teams are expecting the Bucks are going to try to pull something out of their hat, and it kind of depends on where that draft pick lands and what they can do with it. But most teams are expecting the trades to open up again, that he's just going to tell them it's time to part ways. That's
Kurt Helin. This is the NBA Weekly. He joins us every Wednesday to talk about the league. We'll carry the conversation into the podcast and YouTube portion of the conversation. You can watch more of it there. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next Wednesday, Kurt.
I will be here.
All right. Does it is it almost a turnoff when you hear Wemby talk about like, I am the MVP, I should win, defense counts for this? Like, it's so interesting because there was a time where you let your coaches politic for you. You let the assistants politic for you. You let the pundits around the industry politic for you. And now it just feels like guys are just getting out there and being like, no, it's me. Like, and Wemby in particular is not bashful, man. The dude is like, no, I'm here. It's mine.
I actually prefer that personally. I'm like, hey, the false modesty of I'm not. That's for you guys to decide. I'm just playing for the love of the game and trying to win championship. No, he wants the MVP. He wants to be recognized. And by the way, his push lately, I mean, he's really close. And I was discussing this with a buddy at a game the other day. Is next year the time? Like, we're not doing it yet, but I feel like next season becomes the time we go, yeah, he's the best player on the planet. At 22, he's in his fourth season, he's the very best player on the planet and probably will be for the next decade. Like, he's having that kind of impact.
I don't know if I'm actually there yet, and I'll tell you why. As much as it's wild to watch this guy that's at 7'4", 7'5", jacking up threes and stuff, he still doesn't shoot it particularly well from out there. Now, I will argue all day that nobody has a greater impact on the game when they are on the floor than Victor Wembanyama. Nobody. You can give me Jokic, you can give me anybody you want. Nobody impacts the game when they are on the floor on both ends the way that he does. But I still think there are some things. He's going to get better, which is the scary part about it. Assuming he gets a little better on the perimeter, which is crazy to talk about for somebody 7'4", 7'5". Sometimes I think he's out there too much. I would agree with you, but I don't know if it's next year. I'm not sure about that yet.
It's fair. Look, I get it because we're talking about this, and a couple things. He's going to have to prove it in the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. And he's not going to win MVP this year. And I'll tell you, like, I wrote this because in the story I did about, him. Like I said, I like him demanding this, but Shai's going to win this year. And the two keys for me are Shai has played 300 as of us speaking. 363 more minutes, essentially 362 more minutes, something like that. Essentially 7 48-minute games of basketball, more time on the court this year, even though it's 3 more games. But that's a lot of minutes. That's a lot of time that matters. And the other thing Shai and Jokic do incredibly well is they are just insanely efficient. They are so incredibly efficient at scores. Wemby's getting to that level, but he's not quite there yet. And it's what Doncic is kind of at that level, but he lacks the defense. But its efficiency becomes the thing that holds back Cade a little bit, frankly, is just kind of a league average shooter. And once he gets some help, I think that'll improve for him. But like that efficiency level that Jokic and SGA have is just ridiculous. And then it becomes hard to match. And it's also why the advanced stats love those two guys so much, because those are kind of efficiency based.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm so glad you brought up Wemby and this MVP thing, because Kurt, as much as we talk about the 65 game minimum, right? Live in this hypothetical with me for a second. It's gone. We're in next year. And this whole narrative is kind of playing out, right? Victor Wembanyama is doing Victor Wembanyama things, but the only thing that's ever held him back from anything is his health and his availability. Right. How many games would you need to see him play to comfortably be able to vote him for MVP, assuming nobody else plays, Jokic isn't going to play 82. Assume Jokic plays, I don't know, 70 whatever.
Yeah. Assuming that 70 is the kind of cutoff for me where if you play less than that, I might ding you slightly, but it's a curve, right? In the sense of how much value are you getting from this player? How good is this player? How impactful is this player? In theory, if you had 50 really impactful games, you could, insert yourself into a conversation to a degree. I don't think that would happen, but what I mean? In theory, if you had if you're
20 buzzer beaters, right?
Yeah, it's a balancing act. So that said, if you're less than about 70 is when I start to be like, all right. And I actually do it less by games, and I have minutes in there. I use The spreadsheet I have just giving me some idea, tracking some of these stats, set up minutes. I have minutes, not games, because like if you play 20 minutes a night, it's not the same as playing 32, you know?
Sure.
Hey, it's a week later. Who's coming out of the East?
Boston, I guess. It's honestly Boston or New York. Like, I'm really curious if the Knicks can pull it together in the playoffs, because there's moments where you're like, this team looks really good, and then there's moments like last night against the Pelicans where you're like, can't you just put these guys away? And to be fair, the Pelicans are not tanking and playing pretty well, but it gets a little frustrating with the Knicks at points. But when Mitchell Robinson's playing, I really think that their grit makes it an interesting series against Boston.
They've won 7 in a row, Kurt.
By the way, that's the 2-3. That's the second round.
Yeah, I know. Them and the Celtics. Yeah.
That's however it shakes out, and whoever gets home court, you're getting 2-3, and then you're getting. Does that shake? By the way, does that help if you're Cleveland? Are you good with this? Because you get whatever you get in the first round. You win in the first round. You get the 4-5 matchup, so you're gonna, you get whatever. You win that, you get Detroit, a beatable Detroit team that only
love
has
that. Yeah.
And then suddenly you're in the conference finals against whoever comes out of Boston, New York, and is a little beat up, and and that's a team, Cleveland, we've talked about before. All the pieces are there. It really hasn't come together for them the way you want. But if they get Jarrett Allen healthy and playing well off of Harden, I really like the idea of it. But then you get into this game 6 and game 7 against Boston or New York, and hey, James Harden, win it for us. Oh. Yeah.
By the way, you briefly mentioned the Pelicans not tanking, that they're actually playing. If they don't trade Zion in this offseason, they're never trading, because it doesn't feel like his value is ever going to be higher than it is, because he's playing well right now.
And he's played, I haven't looked it up, but like he's going to be 60 plus games, whatever that number. I'm not sure off the top of my head what it was, but like he's played, and he, by the way, 2 seasons ago played 70.
Yeah.
Your argument, and it was all on All-Star and all that. And when he plays, he's not as explosive, not as impactful as he was those first couple of years, but he's still a really good player.
He fills up the stat sheet. He really does.
Does a lot. And so I think they were hoping he'd play a lot of games this year and they could explore a trademark, because people were trying to buy low. Vultures were swooping in last year. Can they do a little better this year and get something back? Because I don't think he can be the centerpiece of what you're building around. And the thing is, they've got really great role players around them, like Trey Murphy and all these guys. Like, I like everything around them. It just doesn't fit. It just doesn't work for them. And so you will see how this shakes out. But I think they're going to try in the offseason. You're going to look, I've said it before, I'll say again here. There's going to be a wild offseason. It is going to be a wild offseason. There's going to be Giannis at the top of that list, but there's going to be a lot of big moves this offseason.
We're going to talk about Hubert Davis here on the show here in just a second.
Brad Stevens has taken himself out of the running, for the record.
Yeah, I saw that.
Billy Donovan?
That's an interesting one. Wow. I don't know. He has said publicly and privately just he doesn't want to go back to college, that he doesn't want to do that. But in an NIL world where it's just like the recruiting is just different, right? Like it's not, you don't have to. I don't know this for a fact. It feels like you're spending less time convincing some kid's mom that he's going to get a good education anymore. Like, I'm not sure if that's how much of that is still in play. But if you offered enough money, might he? I don't know, because that if you're good at North Carolina, you can be there for a long time. And does he want to go back to that? He said no, but money always talks. And it is a slightly easier, half as many games. You don't have to travel as much. Like, there's a lot of perks in that sense. So I'd be curious to see what happens there, because and again, from the outside, just as an observer, they've got to do something big, right? This is North Carolina. Like, they can't be this bad.
Sam, go ahead. I'm set, Sam. Anything else you wanted to throw in? Go ahead.
We have talked so much about how wild of an offseason this is shaping up to be, and the piece that's still kind of sticking out to me of it all, Kurt, is Ja Morant. You had the Grizzlies come out the other day and announce that he's officially not going to play again this season.
Right.
I think that was pretty assumed at this point.
Yes, exactly.
Is it the end of Ja Morant in for the Grizzlies?
Yes, they will. Among the guys who they will very much try to move this summer will be him. Again, that's the question. Is they went into this thinking, man, I want Desmond Bain type of that back, and honestly, they are not going to get Desmond Bain. Like, it's not going to be close to that yet. But look, they've already moved on from JJJ, Jaren Jackson Jr., who landed in a much better spot for him. This whole thing is, yeah, they're rebuilding, and they will move Ja this summer for whatever it ends up being. And probably around the draft, there'll probably be picks coming back, and they'll try to go that way. And by the way, since we're ending this, I will just do my quick rant, or not rant, but just everybody's in love with Acuff, Darren Acuff, in the tournament, Arkansas, and with good reason, by the way. That guy might be the most fun guy to watch in college basketball. He is. That is, like, I hadn't seen a lot of him. I saw him at Hoop Summit last year in Portland, and like really liked his game. Really, like, he's been dynamic for John Calipari, who tends to bury his guards sometimes. So like that's been good to see. Like all the great, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray and all these great guards who did crap for him at Kentucky because of the system get to the pros and are great. He's poorly put the ball in Acuff's hands and let him go. I will just tell you, talking to teams right now, he's still probably fifth. Like he's still as great as he's played. Teams are not putting him in front of Boozer, who's probably third, but it really depends on the lottery. Boozer, the analytics teams love him. Indiana is an interesting choice if they fluke into number one because they don't want to. Do they want to draft? I mean, do they want to draft Peterson? AJ seems to be on top of most boards now. AJ DeMonza, so we'll see. They might take him, but it'd be tempting to take Boozer because you put Boozer next to Zubats with Halliburton running the pick and roll, and that's really interesting. Anyway, and don't forget Caleb Wilson out of aforementioned North Carolina is probably going to go fourth. We haven't seen him because he's got the fractured thumb, so we haven't seen him. But when I started really talking to teams, they were like, yeah, we really love Acuff. He's been so much fun. And I know other people have gotten reports that, he's up in the top three. But the people I talk to, he's probably fifth. He might be in Penn at fifth at this point, but he's fifth.
That actually leads me to another question, Kurt, because something that you and I talked about throughout the course of the college basketball regular season was the Darren Peterson thing and how that was all going for Bill Self. And obviously there are all the questions about Bill Self and him staying at Kansas. But what have you heard from teams around Darren Peterson? Obviously, Kansas gets bounced from the tournament a lot earlier than some people expected. What have you heard about how they feel about his injury, his hamstring, or maybe his personality?
Everybody wants to see the medical stuff. I don't think they're terribly worried about the personality. They think he wasn't healthy. It's an interesting divide though between the people who have concerns and the people who still believe the guy they saw a year ago who was just more explosive in high school and on the AU circuit and all that. They think that guy is still in there, and that it's Bill Self that takes a lot of the abuse there. Like, it's just like. He had him coming off the ball. I watched some of that game, and I'm like, what you got to say for Calipari with Acuff, for, I don't know who the BYU coach is off the top of my head, with DeBonsa. Hey, I've got a great player. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give him the ball and tell him to go create and do stuff. And Peterson was coming off. Like, they had him off the ball a lot more. They had him working off ball a lot more when he was an explosive creator. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And again, small sample size theater, and maybe I'm not a scout, but it just struck me as odd. But I know that there are other teams who are like, was this situational, and they want to get him in for workouts. I still don't think he falls past 3, but then probably not past 2. Again, the lottery matters so much this year because everybody's got it a little bit different at the top. But he should still go number 1 if the right team lands up there.
I lied. One more thing just popped into my head that I got to ask you, and I promise I'll let you go because I got to get some other stuff done here.
I have nothing to do all day. So,
I wish I could
Lucky
say that.
bastard, man.
No, that is not true, by the way. Like, I'm already, while I've been sitting here, I've been watching, like, hey, when's that expansion story popping up on my so
No, but I want to ask this. Is the Lakers finished to this regular season where they're playing really well right now? And obviously the playoffs will dictate what happens next. How much of that is going to dictate what happens with LeBron? Because people are watching right now and going, oh, maybe this can work with LeBron still being here if he's willing to accept a role. Sort of, give me a sense here, especially as somebody that gets to go to a lot of those Laker games. Is there a chance he winds up back there next year?
Yes, it's a chance. I still think most people think he's going to be on the move, that the Lakers want to get younger and they need to get, it's a weird thing to say about LeBron, but they need to get more athletic and more defensive. And, unless LeBron has a DeLorean with a flux capacitor in the back, like that LeBron isn't going to be here anymore.
Yeah.
But it is working. And if it's one of those things where it could end up in a marriage of like, man, I'd have to take a huge discount to go to Cleveland. Maybe the Lakers will pay me a little more to stay here. And the Lakers don't find the guys they want, and it just kind of, well, let's just do this for another year, because you're right. Right now, when you see it all together, and with Rui and with Smart, like who've become key because they can defend and shoot, they become the key guys to go around those big three. It all kind of works. I mean, that's a good team that's really kind of hitting its stride right now, especially when you get this kind of play out of Ayton. But I am curious. I still think that they're looking long term, thinking, I don't know if this is how we want it to play out. They would like to get younger and more athletic. But wherever LeBron lands, this is the role. If you send him to, I don't know, Golden State or Cleveland or New York or wherever you pretend he might want to go, whatever team kind of has a disappointing playoff and is like, maybe if we bring in LeBron, he's still got to accept the role wherever it is. So it's going to be. I think he's come to terms with that.
Okay. Kurt Helin, that's the NBA Weekly, joins us every Wednesday on the show. Always appreciate you, my man. NBC Sports, Pro Basketball Talk. Go and check out his work. By the time you've seen this, there will already be a piece up there on NBA expansion, so go and check that out as well.
Yes. Yeah. My dreams of a second team in New Orleans are dead, but I'm still going to.
Thanks, Kurt.
Take care, man.